Darkness drifted silently across the void. For centuries, the Black Ship had been nothing more than a whispered legend, an ancient vessel that appeared in times of despair and vanished as suddenly as it came. Some said it was built by the first free worlds to resist oppression. Others believed it was not built at all, but born from the pain and rage of civilizations crushed under tyranny. Whatever its origin, it always arrived when hope seemed lost, and tonight, it was back. The galaxy had fallen into silence under the rule of the Dominion, a vast empire that stretched across thousands of systems. Entire planets bowed to its will, their skies filled with warships, their people bound by fear. The Dominion promised order and progress, but behind its banners were the ashes of cultures erased, languages silenced, and histories rewritten. Those who resisted vanished. Those who obeyed simply survived. But survival was not enough anymore. Hidden across the fractured systems were pockets of rebellion. Miners, engineers, soldiers, and ordinary families who had lost everything. They had no armies, no fleets, only a shared dream that one day the stars would belong to them again. That dream had no leader, no plan, until the signal appeared. It began as static, a strange pulse cutting through encrypted Dominion channels. At first, no one paid attention. Then the pulse repeated, forming patterns, ancient codes from an era long forgotten. When decoded, the message was simple: "We are awake." It was signed with a symbol long erased from the archives, a black ship with wings of light. Across the galaxy, whispers spread like wildfire. Could it be true? Could the Black Ship have returned? The Dominion's fleets tightened their patrols. Commanders ordered communications shut down, afraid of the unrest it might cause. But it was too late. The idea had already taken root. Hope, small and fragile, had returned to the stars. In the outer sectors, on a frozen world called Iran, a small group of rebels gathered in a hidden outpost beneath the ice. They had intercepted the same signal. Among them was a young pilot who had once served in the Dominion fleet. He had seen the Empire's cruelty firsthand, the cities burned to enforce loyalty, the families separated for speaking forbidden words. He had left everything behind, even his name, to fight against it. To him, the message was more than hope. It was a call. While others debated whether the signal was real, he was already preparing a ship, scavenged from old war wrecks and patched with stolen parts. "If the Black Ship is out there," he said quietly, "I'm going to find it." His voice trembled not from fear, but from the weight of what that meant. Because finding it could mean the start of a new war, or the end of everything. Meanwhile, in the Dominion's central command, high above the core worlds, a council gathered. Reports of rising unrest poured in from multiple systems, miners refusing to work, colonies declaring independence, even parts of the military showing signs of disobedience. The cause? A single message. One of the admirals slammed his fist on the table. "A ghost ship does not destroy empires," he said. But another voice, older and quieter, replied, "No, but belief does." The Dominion's leader ordered the full fleet mobilized. Every ship was to search for the source of the signal. Every rebel outpost was to be destroyed. The galaxy would burn again before they allowed history to repeat itself. Days passed, then weeks. The rebellion spread faster than anyone could have imagined. People no longer hid their defiance. Across star systems, messages appeared on Dominion networks, drawings of a black silhouette with glowing edges, the same mark found on the ancient signal. The Black Ship had become the symbol of freedom, a reminder that no empire, no matter how powerful, could extinguish the will to be free. And then, one night, every sensor across the outer sectors went dark. Power grids failed, satellites flickered out, and for 30 seconds there was absolute silence. When the systems came back online, Dominion patrols reported something massive drifting through the void. A ship larger than anything ever built, its hull dark as shadow, absorbing starlight. The black ship had returned. The young pilot was the first to see it up close. His ship shook under the pressure of its gravity field. It looked alive, its surface shifting like liquid metal. No broadcast came from it, no lights, no weapons. Only a deep, resonant hum that seemed to echo through his bones. He tried to call out to it, but before his transmission could send, his console filled with symbols, the same ones from the original signal. Then a voice, not mechanical but human, spoke through his comms. "You are not alone." He didn't know whether to be afraid or relieved. The stories said the black ship didn't just fight, it chose who would command it. Those who carried true intent, not greed or vengeance, but something purer. And now it was reaching out to him. He hesitated, staring at the glowing symbols dancing before his eyes. Outside his window, the ship slowly turned toward him, its vast silhouette blotting out the stars. Back on Iron, the rebel base erupted with incoming transmissions. Dominion forces were approaching, hundreds of ships locking onto their coordinates. Panic spread as the frozen ground began to shake under orbital bombardment. But then, from beyond the clouds, a shadow fell across the horizon. The bombardment stopped. The Dominion fleet had gone silent. In the sky above, a single dark shape hovered, silent and immense. The black ship was there. The young pilot's voice came through the comms, calm but trembling. "It's here," he said. "It's real." Static followed, then a blinding surge of energy as the ship's wings unfolded, spreading like dawn across the frozen sky. Dominion ships fired in desperation, but the blasts vanished into its shadow. Then came a light so bright it washed across the planet, and everything went still. When the light faded, the Dominion fleet was gone. Only the black ship remained, hovering silently. It didn't attack the rebel base. It simply drifted away, leaving behind trails of starlight that shimmered like hope itself. No one knew where it went next, or who was inside. But across the galaxy, people began to rise. Colonies declared freedom. Armies switched sides. The Dominion's grip began to break, piece by piece. But the war was far from over. The Dominion still controlled the core worlds, and rumors spread that they were building a weapon powerful enough to destroy even the black ship. The young pilot, now branded a traitor by the Empire and a hero by the rebellion, vowed to uncover the truth. As he gazed into the stars, his ship's sensors picked up another transmission, different from before, more urgent, almost like a warning. The black ship was calling again, but this time, the message was darker. "The chains are not broken yet." He didn't know what it meant, but he knew one thing. The fight for freedom had only just begun. The fate of Galaxies was shifting, and soon, every choice he made would decide whether they rose together or fell into endless darkness. And somewhere, deep in the void, the black ship waited. The black ship had vanished again, leaving the galaxy in a state of uneasy anticipation. Systems that had once bowed to the Dominion began to murmur in hushed tones, their leaders unsure if the shadow they had glimpsed was salvation or a warning. On Iron, the young pilot stared at the trails of light left in the sky, his heart still racing. He had expected something magnificent, yes, but he had not expected awe. The sheer presence of the ship had shifted something inside him. Fear, certainly, but more than that, a spark of purpose he had never felt before. The frozen world around him seemed strangely alive after the black ship's departure. Snowfields glimmered faintly as if charged by the energy that had passed overhead, and the outpost's generators, which had been barely functional, hummed with renewed power. The rebels moved cautiously, aware that the Dominion could return at any moment. They had survived only because the black ship had intervened, but survival was no victory. The war was just beginning, and no one knew what the black ship expected of them, or if it expected anything at all. To understand what had just happened, the young pilot began to investigate the symbols that had appeared in his console. They were not like any language he had encountered, not purely technical or mathematical. They shifted constantly, as if alive, forming patterns that defied logic, yet somehow felt familiar. As he traced his fingers over the symbols, fragments of memory came unbidden. Visions of ancient battles, of entire civilizations standing against overwhelming forces, of ships carved from shadows and light. It was as if the ship itself was showing him history, but he could not tell whether it was warning him, teaching him, or testing him. Meanwhile, the Dominion's silence unnerved even their most loyal commanders. Across the core worlds, admirals convened in hidden chambers, their faces pale with confusion. Systems that had been tightly controlled were reporting strange anomalies. Communications scrambled, fleets unaccountably diverted, and soldiers refusing orders without explanation. Some whispered that the Black Ship had returned not as a weapon, but as a harbinger, and that the Dominion had underestimated the depth of its influence. On Iron, the pilot's curiosity drew him to the frozen caves beneath the outpost. The caves had been used as a shelter for generations, but as he ventured deeper, he noticed strange markings etched into the walls, faded symbols that mirrored those he had seen in the ship's transmissions. The lines were delicate but deliberate, forming constellations that did not match any star charts he knew. He ran his hand over one of the carvings and felt a subtle vibration, almost like a heartbeat. It was a reminder that the galaxy held secrets older than the Dominion, and perhaps older than any living being. The rebels began to share their own experiences as well. The engineers spoke of machines responding to commands they had never been programmed to recognize, as if some unseen intelligence guided them. Scouts reported shadows moving in the snow, too large and too precise to be natural, glimpses of a form that disappeared whenever anyone tried to follow. These occurrences frightened some, inspired others, but all agreed on one thing: the galaxy was changing, and the Black Ship was at the center of it. Even the young pilot was beginning to question his own understanding of freedom and power. He had fought the Dominion believing that victory was measured by fleets and firepower, by territory taken and enemies defeated. But the Black Ship seemed to suggest a different kind of war, one waged not only with weapons but with influence, with the courage to awaken others, with the will to see beyond fear. And yet, he could not shake the feeling that the ship's true purpose remained hidden, waiting for the right moment or the right person to reveal itself. In the Dominion's inner circle, tension rose. A senior strategist warned that the Black Ship might not be loyal to any faction, that it could favor one rebellion today and abandon them tomorrow. Another council member countered that the sheer legend of the ship could fracture morale, causing entire sectors to question the Empire's authority. Orders went out to track every signal, every anomaly, every whisper in the outer sectors. No one wanted to admit that the Black Ship was already beyond their reach, moving according to rules they could not comprehend. The young pilot realized that he could not stay on Iron. The Dominion would soon learn the location of the outpost, and though the Black Ship had protected them once, it could not remain indefinitely. He prepared his vessel for departure, scavenging extra fuel cells and reinforcing the hull with the strongest materials they had. He did not know where he would go, but instinct told him to follow the trail left by the ship. Somewhere in the outer reaches of the galaxy, a message was waiting for him, a path only he could take. The journey through the void was treacherous. Space was no longer just an empty backdrop. It seemed alive with tension. Sensors picked up bursts of energy that defied explanation, distortions in gravitational fields, and fleeting glimpses of forms that disappeared before they could be fully scanned. Each anomaly was a reminder that the Black Ship was not just a physical presence, but something more, something that could bend reality in ways beyond understanding. Along the way, he encountered others who had felt the influence of the Black Ship. On a mining station orbiting a dying sun, entire crews had abandoned their posts to follow strange signals. In the dense asteroid fields of a shattered colony, Survivors reported seeing visions of ships moving without engines, piloted by shadows of long-lost heroes. The pilot began to understand that the ship's effect was contagious. It inspired action, drew people toward a cause, and forced them to confront the courage hidden deep inside themselves. Despite these encounters, the deeper purpose of the Black Ship remained a mystery. Some of the rebels speculated that it was searching for someone or perhaps something. Others believed it was guiding them toward a confrontation with the Dominion that had yet to arrive. The pilot wondered if the ship's silence was a challenge, a test to see who could endure uncertainty, who could act when every step forward was fraught with danger. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the answers might not come from technology or strategy, but from choices, morality, and the resilience of those willing to risk everything for freedom. Back on Irin, the outpost that had been a safe haven now felt abandoned and fragile. Supplies dwindled, alarms had stopped ringing, and the whispers of the caves seemed louder than ever. The Black Ship's departure left a void, and in that emptiness, the rebels had no guidance but their own instincts. Some questioned whether following the pilot was worth the risk, while others felt that their lives had been irrevocably changed by the glimpse of the ship. In every decision, the presence of something greater haunted them, shaping their actions even when unseen. The Dominion, too, was restless. Secret fleets moved through dark corridors, deploying covert operatives to retrieve information about the ship and its influence. Scholars, engineers, and spies were pressed into service to decode old archives, ancient texts, and forbidden histories, all in the hope of predicting the ship's next move. Yet for every answer they found, more questions emerged. The Black Ship seemed to exist outside of time and politics, following rules no one could foresee, challenging the very notion of control. As the young pilot pressed deeper into the outer rim, a growing tension weighed on him. Every choice, every decision carried consequences far beyond his understanding. And yet, he felt the same pull, the same unshakable sense that the Black Ship had chosen him for a purpose larger than any battle or strategy could define. The galaxy was on the brink, caught between fear and hope, between oppression and the chance for freedom. And in the distance, beyond nebulae and shattered stars, he could sense the next signal waiting, a message that would test everything he thought he knew about loyalty, courage, and the meaning of being free. For now, the mysteries of the Black Ship remained unsolved. Its intentions, its origins, its ultimate destination, none of it was clear. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same. Every star system, every rebel, every citizen held their breath, knowing that what came next could either ignite a new era of freedom or plunge everything into an even deeper shadow. And as the pilot's ship slipped further into the dark, he whispered a vow to himself. The words carried into the void like a promise. I will find it. I will understand. And I will not let fear define us. The Black Ship waited, silent and immense, watching, testing, shaping the fate of galaxies from the shadows. The galaxy was shifting. Every system, every fleet, every isolated outpost seemed caught in a tense web of anticipation, as if the mere memory of the Black Ship's presence had left the universe holding its breath. The young pilot pressed onward, navigating the uncharted stretches of space beyond the outer rim, but the deeper he traveled, the more he realized that the Black Ship's influence had reached farther than anyone could imagine. The Dominion's reach, once absolute, was now cracking. But cracks spread unpredictably, and with them came new dangers. On a small agricultural colony orbiting a dying star, farmers once content to work in silence were organizing themselves into militias. They had no training, no heavy weapons, but the vision of the Black Ship, its symbol etched into their hearts, had given them courage. They spoke in whispers of freedom, of standing against the Dominion, of sending signals into space in hopes the ship would notice them. And yet fear lingered in their eyes. What if the Dominion discovered them first? What if the Black Ship never returned? They faced the impossible question: act now and risk annihilation, or wait and risk losing everything they had left. Meanwhile, within the Dominion's core command, divisions were growing. Some argued that the Black Ship could be destroyed with overwhelming force, a calculated strike to erase the threat once and for all. Others cautioned that it could not be destroyed, that it was beyond conventional understanding, and any attempt to hunt it openly would spark rebellion on a scale the Empire could not contain. Tension filled the council chambers as generals and ministers argued over strategies, each more desperate than the last. And in the midst of the debate, a shadow moved among them, a covert advisor who spoke rarely, but whose words seemed to unsettle even the most confident leaders. "The ship does not move for us," the figure whispered. "It moves for those who are ready." Back in the void, the young pilot's path intersected with other travelers, outlaws, smugglers, and explorers who had heard rumors of the Black Ship's return. Some were drawn by curiosity, others by ambition, all believing that they could harness its power. But no one could touch it, and every attempt only ended in frustration. One group of mercenaries, boasting weapons far advanced beyond the outer colonies, chased the ship across a sector of debris-laden space, only to vanish when they approached the shimmering trails of its light. The pilot watched from a safe distance, realizing that the ship's influence was selective, almost sentient, as if testing the motives of those who sought it. At the same time, internal conflicts within the rebel groups intensified. Not everyone shared the same vision of freedom. Some argued that the Black Ship should lead, that they must follow wherever it went, even blindly. Others insisted that reliance on a single vessel, no matter how powerful, was dangerous. They debated tactics, priorities, and morality late into the nights, the tension often spilling over into clashes of words and wills. Trust became fragile, and small acts of defiance threatened to fracture alliances that were already precarious. On Irin, the abandoned outpost became a focal point for this debate. Supplies were limited, yet the symbol of the Black Ship kept hope alive. Engineers continued to modify old ships in preparation for long journeys, miners scavenged materials for weapons, and scouts trained to navigate treacherous regions of space. The young pilot, now seen as a figure of inspiration, struggled with the responsibility placed upon him. He could feel the eyes of the galaxy on his decisions, and every choice seemed to carry weight far beyond his understanding. The Dominion, sensing the growing unrest, moved in calculated waves. Strike teams were deployed to colonies rumored to have seen the Black Ship, often arriving just hours after messages were sent into the void. Their method was subtle: eradicate leadership, destabilize communication, and suppress hope before it could spread. But in every corner of the galaxy, the echoes of the ship persisted. Even in silence, its presence shaped actions, drove courage, and inspired unity among those who had never considered themselves warriors. In a distant nebula, a research vessel studying anomalies in dark energy fields detected strange signals, a rhythmic pulse that resonated with the same frequencies reported by the young pilot. The lead scientist, torn between skepticism and fascination, realized that the signals were not random. They formed a complex pattern, almost like a map. And as he studied the data, fragments of history emerged: ancient ships, lost civilizations, battles fought over the essence of freedom itself. He sent his findings to a hidden network of scholars, sparking debates about whether the Black Ship was a relic, a weapon, or something beyond both. Yet amidst all these events, the largest threat remained unseen. The Dominion had begun constructing a secret weapon in the core worlds, rumored to be capable of overwhelming even the most extraordinary defenses. Whispers spoke of energy channels that could manipulate gravitational fields, of constructs capable of erasing entire fleets. Only a handful of insiders knew the full scope, and even among them, the fear of failure gnawed constantly. If the weapon were completed, It could either destroy the black ship or provoke a chain reaction that would engulf countless systems in chaos. The young pilot felt the pressure of this mounting conflict. Every encounter, every discovery seemed to bring him closer to understanding the ship's purpose, yet farther from certainty. Alongside him, other rebels wrestled with their own fears. One engineer, hardened by years of Dominion exploitation, refused to board ships without thorough checks, insisting that survival depended on precision rather than luck. A scout, whose family had been lost in a Dominion raid, swore to act recklessly, driven by vengeance rather than strategy. The tension between these contrasting approaches threatened to unravel their fragile unity, even as the black ship's presence reminded them of the larger mission. In the Dominion's inner circle, paranoia festered. Fleets that had once operated with flawless discipline now hesitated, delayed by fear of unknown forces. Spies and double agents complicated decisions, and misinformation spread like wildfire. A single rumor of the black ship appearing in one sector could trigger panic, forcing fleets to divert resources and leaving strategic targets unprotected. Commanders grew suspicious of each other, unsure if loyalty was genuine or compromised by the unseen hand of rebellion. Even the very fabric of space seemed unsettled. Pilots reported warp routes that shifted without explanation, communication signals that echoed back distorted messages, and gravitational anomalies that challenged navigation. Some attributed these to natural phenomena, but the young pilot knew better. These were signs of the black ship's influence, subtle yet undeniable, shaping the battlefield without firing a single shot. It was a war being fought not just with fleets, but with perception, courage, and the ability to act when the path forward was unclear. As he moved through these challenges, the pilot discovered something unsettling. A shadowy figure traveling through the same sectors, always at the periphery of his sensors. It was human in shape, yet the presence radiated a strange energy, one that seemed to mirror the ship itself. Some nights he imagined it speaking through his console, guiding him toward decisions he hadn't consciously made. He could not tell whether it was an ally or an enemy, and the uncertainty gnawed at him more than any physical threat. The colonies, too, felt the growing tension. People who had once obeyed silently now questioned orders, even small acts of disobedience sending ripples through the Dominion's control network. Rebels debated whether to strike immediately, seize critical locations, or wait for guidance from the black ship. Every choice carried risk, and every delay allowed the Dominion to adapt. Even the symbol of freedom, the black ship, was not a guarantee of victory, only a challenge, an enigma whose influence demanded action without certainty. Amidst these converging pressures, the galaxy itself seemed to prepare for a reckoning. Stars flickered in unstable patterns, nebulae pulsed with strange energy, and entire sectors hummed with tension. The black ship's presence, though unseen for now, shaped events across countless worlds, forcing decisions that would determine the fates of millions. And everywhere people wondered, would it lead them to liberation or to a greater peril they could not yet comprehend? The young pilot pressed forward, alone in his thoughts yet surrounded by the invisible currents of history, courage, and fear. He had glimpsed the black ship, understood a fragment of its purpose, and yet remained uncertain. Every decision now carried weight, not just for him, but for every life in the galaxy caught between hope and oppression. And somewhere, beyond the reach of sensors and spies, the black ship waited, silent, immense, watching and shaping the war that had only just begun. The conflict was no longer a matter of fleets and firepower alone. It was about trust, perception, courage, and the choices that defined every life touched by its shadow. And in the cold, infinite expanse of space, the next move would come, not from the pilot, not from the Dominion, but from the enigma itself, the black ship, the symbol of freedom, the force shaping the fate of galaxies. The galaxy held its breath. Everywhere, systems teetered on the edge of chaos. Rebel fleets navigated treacherous space lanes with urgency, hoping to stay ahead of Dominion patrols while following the faint traces left by the Black Ship. Every sensor blip, every anomaly, every flicker of starlight became a potential sign of the ship's next move, or a trap. The young pilot led his small team through the void, tension etched into every face around him. They were no longer just chasing a legend. They were racing toward destiny. Yet the rules of this new war were unclear, and the margin for error was razor-thin. Reports from the outer colonies painted a picture of growing unrest. Entire populations were mobilizing spontaneously, inspired by the symbol of the Black Ship. Factories halted production of Dominion war machines, only to start producing weapons for rebellion. Supply lines were being sabotaged. Communications networks went dark or rerouted, seemingly under the guidance of unseen hands. The Dominion's control, once absolute, had begun to crumble. And yet the Empire remained a formidable force, capable of unleashing devastation on a moment's notice. Every victory came with the weight of potential disaster. The young pilot's journey brought him to a system shrouded in an unstable nebula, where space itself seemed alive with shifting energy. Navigating the dense clouds required skill and precision. A single miscalculation could tear his ship apart. Sensors flickered with strange readings, bursts of energy that could be natural phenomena, or they could be the work of the Black Ship itself. The team debated whether to proceed cautiously or to press ahead at maximum speed, their nerves taut with uncertainty. One wrong decision here could mean destruction, not just for them, but for the fragile hope that clung to every rebel system. In the Dominion's command halls, panic was palpable. Intelligence reports indicated multiple sectors operating autonomously, refusing orders, and showing signs of coordination previously thought impossible. Admirals argued over whether to engage openly or focus on covert suppression. But disagreements escalated into personal rivalries. One general accused another of sabotaging fleet movements, while ministers warned that the Black Ship's influence was spreading faster than any weapon could contain. For the first time in decades, the Dominion faced uncertainty on a scale it had never known. On board the pilot's ship, tension boiled beneath the surface. The crew, though disciplined, struggled with exhaustion and fear. Every movement through the nebula was a test, every anomaly a potential threat. The pilot found himself staring at the void, wondering if the Black Ship had purposefully led them here, or if this was a test of endurance to see how far they could go before the pressure broke them. In the silence between stars, every heartbeat felt amplified, every decision carrying consequences far beyond the moment. The nebula itself seemed to resist them. Gravity wells appeared without warning, twisting trajectories. Energy spikes threatened to overload shields. Strange shadows flitted past the ship, glimpses of something massive and dark that vanished when sensors tried to lock on. The pilot felt the weight of the unknown pressing down, yet something within him urged forward. The Black Ship's influence was subtle but undeniable. He could sense that their path was being guided, even if he did not understand the destination. Meanwhile, the Dominion was preparing its ultimate weapon, a construct that could alter the balance of the galaxy in an instant. Hidden deep within a core system, its energy reactors were primed, and test simulations showed terrifying destructive potential. The weapon could erase fleets, destabilize planets, even create rifts in space itself. Admirals debated whether to deploy it immediately against the rebels or to wait for the Black Ship to appear. Some feared the ship could absorb or evade the weapon, turning the Empire's greatest creation against them. The uncertainty gnawed at the leaders, and with each passing moment, the tension in the galaxy grew. On the pilot's ship, the crew encountered another mysterious phenomenon, a field of distorted signals that seemed almost sentient. Messages from colonies and scouts came scrambled, distorted beyond comprehension. Equipment behaved erratically, as if responding to commands it had not received. It became clear that the Black Ship's influence extended far beyond its immediate presence. It was shaping events, manipulating perceptions, and testing the resolve of those who followed it. Every choice they made now carried weight, not only for survival, but for the fate of entire systems. In a distant mining colony, rebels prepared for an assault they had hoped to avoid. Dominion forces had discovered their location and were advancing with overwhelming numbers. Yet even as fear spread among the civilians, the symbol of the black ship appeared in the sky. A faint shimmer of light drifting across the horizon. Hearts lifted, courage surged, and the militia moved with renewed determination. They were not entirely sure why the ship appeared now, or what it expected, but the sight emboldened them, proving that the war was no longer one-sided. Within the Dominion fleet, confusion turned to desperation. Reports of entire units defecting, refusing to obey orders, and coordinating with rebels shook the command structure to its core. Spies, traitors, and rogue elements multiplied, each spreading doubt and chaos. High-ranking officers scrambled to identify the source, realizing that the black ship's influence extended not just physically, but psychologically. Morale was fragile, and the seeds of insurrection had been planted deep within the empire itself. The young pilot's ship finally emerged from the nebula into open space, only to face a grim sight, a Dominion armada waiting ahead, ships lined in formation as if anticipating their arrival. The pilot's heart sank. Every option carried danger, yet the black ship's guidance seemed to insist on this path. It was as if the true test of courage lay not in evasion, but in confrontation. The crew braced for what could be the most decisive engagement of their journey, tension so thick it seemed to press against the hull. Even as the pilot calculated potential escape routes and tactical maneuvers, he could feel the shadow that had been following him, watching from a distance. It shifted along the edge of sensors, neither attacking nor retreating, a silent presence that seemed to mirror the black ship itself. He wondered if it was a guide, a guardian, or a harbinger of danger. Every instinct screamed caution, but every whisper of intuition urged forward. The path was unclear, the stakes unimaginable, and yet there was no turning back. In the colonies and rebel outposts, the buildup was equally tense. Scouts reported Dominion reinforcements moving toward critical points. Civilians were evacuated where possible, but many chose to stay, driven by hope or desperation. Rumors circulated of the black ship's next appearance, and every sighting, every rumor, every unexplained signal drove both courage and fear higher. The galaxy teetered on the edge of conflict, poised for a moment that could reshape everything. As the pilot's ship approached the armada, the stars themselves seemed to react. Energy pulses rippled across space, visible even against the dark void. Equipment vibrated as if resonating with some unseen force. The crew clung to their stations, realizing that the confrontation they faced was not just about firepower, but about endurance, instinct, and the courage to act when no path seemed safe. The air aboard the ship felt electric, charged with anticipation, every heartbeat synchronized with the distant hum of the black ship's unseen presence. The Dominion commanders studied their sensors, growing increasingly unsettled. This was no ordinary fleet, no ordinary engagement. The rebels' positioning, their timing, their coordination, even their hesitation, suggested guidance beyond human understanding. Some whispered of the black ship, fearing the truth they could not fully articulate. Their hesitation, coupled with internal rivalries and fear of failure, left openings in their formation. The galaxy held its breath as two forces stood poised on the edge of war, waiting for the spark that would ignite the most critical battle yet. And far above the battlefield, unseen and immense, the black ship drifted in the darkness. Silent, enigmatic, its shadow stretching across countless light years. Its intentions remained a mystery, but its influence was undeniable. Every life, every fleet, every colony caught in its wake had been shaped by it. And as the young pilot's vessel edged closer to the looming Dominion armada, every decision, every move, every breath carried the weight of the galaxy's fate. The calm before the storm was complete. Every eye, every sensor, every heart focused on the same moment. The inevitable clash. The moment when courage, fear, and destiny would collide. The tension had reached its peak. No one knew what would happen next. Only one thing was certain: the fate of countless worlds, the outcome of rebellion and empire, and the true purpose of the Black Ship were all converging on the edge of a moment the galaxy would never forget. And in that silence, as the void itself seemed to hold its breath, the first signs of the coming storm began to stir. Just as the young pilot's ship crested the edge of the Dominion Armada, a sudden surge rippled across the void. Energy readings on every sensor spiked simultaneously, throwing systems into chaos. The fleet's formations shuddered as if space itself had shifted, and the pilot realized with a jolt that the Black Ship was no longer distant. It was here, much closer than anyone had anticipated. But this was no ordinary arrival. Its presence was more overwhelming than before, bending light and gravity in ways that made navigation nearly impossible. The shadows it cast stretched across the fleet like a living thing, and for the first time, the young pilot understood that the Black Ship's power was not just defensive. It could alter the very environment of space itself. Before anyone could react, a secondary shockwave erupted from the nebula behind them, far larger than anything previously encountered. The Dominion Armada's outer vessels were caught off guard, their weapons systems overloaded by the pulse. Ships spun uncontrollably, energy shields flickering as the very fabric of space warped around them. Even the pilot's vessel rocked violently, alarms blaring across the bridge. The Black Ship remained silent, its shadow looming, almost contemplative, as if judging every decision the fleet made. For the rebels, it was exhilarating. For the Dominion, it was terrifying. But then, the unexpected happened. From deep within the Dominion Armada, a fleet previously hidden emerged. These ships had not been detected in any sensor sweep, cloaked in advanced stealth technology. The fleet's commander, a calculating strategist whose loyalty to the Empire was absolute, had anticipated the Black Ship's influence reaching beyond its visible range. This secondary fleet was armed with experimental weapons capable of piercing even the Black Ship's rumored defenses. The young pilot realized with a sinking feeling that the confrontation he had prepared for was only the beginning. The Dominion had a contingency, and it was worse than anything the outer systems had yet faced. At the same time, the pilot's own crew began reporting strange phenomena inside their ship. Navigation systems were fluctuating inexplicably, compasses spinning in ways that defied physics, and strange readings from the ship's energy core suggested an external influence. Something far larger than themselves was interacting with the vessel in real time. It was no longer just a battle for survival. It had become a test of perception, courage, and instinct. Every maneuver carried risk. Every decision could lead to catastrophe, and the crew's nerves were stretched to the breaking point. The Black Ship, however, remained enigmatic. It did not fire a single weapon, nor did it attack directly. Instead, it shifted subtly, repositioning itself in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. The young pilot sensed that the ship was guiding the engagement rather than controlling it outright. It was testing, observing, shaping the conflict in ways that only became clear after actions were taken. And yet, even with this advantage, the arrival of the hidden Dominion fleet raised the stakes exponentially. What had seemed like a battle they could survive now risked escalating into total annihilation. In the outer colonies, the ripple effects of the escalating conflict began to manifest. Rebel groups reported Dominion strike teams deploying in previously safe sectors, while unexpected surges of energy disrupted communication networks, leaving scattered outposts isolated. Civilians and militias alike felt the tension spike, caught between hope fueled by the Black Ship's influence and fear of the Dominion's sudden, ruthless escalation. The very symbol of freedom had drawn the Empire's focus, and now that focus came with unimaginable force. Back aboard the pilot's ship, the crew struggled to maintain cohesion. One engineer discovered a minor breach in the hull's energy conduits, a crack caused not by enemy fire but by the strange fluctuations radiating from the black ship. "It's destabilizing the entire system," the engineer shouted, sweat streaking their face. "If we don't adjust the core flow, we could implode before we even reach them." The young pilot's hands moved over the controls instinctively, rerouting energy, stabilizing shields, and issuing orders in a rhythm dictated by instinct rather than strategy. Every second counted, and yet the true nature of the enemy, both visible and unseen, remained a puzzle. Suddenly, the second plot twist revealed itself. The hidden Dominion fleet had not only emerged, it carried prisoners. Among them were key figures from the outer systems. Scientists, political leaders, and even some of the rebels who had inspired entire colonies to rise. They were displayed as leverage, intended to force the rebels and the young pilot into submission. The pilot's heart sank. The stakes were no longer abstract or symbolic. Lives were on the line. And with the black ship hovering above, silent yet imposing, he realized that this might be exactly what it intended: to test his resolve in the face of impossible choices. The Dominion's secondary fleet deployed weapons unlike anything the pilot had seen. Massive gravity cannons created distortions that pulled entire sections of space into twisting vortices, threatening to crush ships that ventured too close. Experimental disruptors scrambled sensors, leaving vessels blind and deaf in the void. And worst of all, automated boarding drones launched with terrifying precision, designed to capture ships rather than destroy them outright. The engagement was no longer a traditional battle. It was a battlefield of physics, perception, and nerve, one where a single error could mean death or capture. The crew, though seasoned and determined, began to show cracks in their unity. Fear whispered at the edges of every command decision, and tension flared between those who advocated aggressive maneuvers and those who counseled caution. The young pilot struggled to maintain focus, realizing that leadership alone would not be enough. Trust had to be absolute, instincts razor-sharp, and courage unwavering. The black ship, moving silently above the chaos, seemed to measure not just skill, but character. And the pilot knew that failure here could ripple across the galaxy, extinguishing hope before the true battle even began. As the hidden fleet advanced, a second anomaly appeared. A massive gravitational rift opened near the center of the battlefield, dragging smaller ships into its pull. Both Dominion and Rebel vessels were caught in the edge of its influence. The pilot's ship barely escaped, veering dangerously close to the black ship itself. Its presence offered both protection and confusion. The energy emitted by the ship warped the rift in ways that saved them momentarily, yet introduced new dangers. Every move had to be calculated with precision, every choice weighed against countless potential outcomes. In the midst of this chaos, the black ship shifted again, revealing hints of an unexpected alliance. Smaller vessels that had been previously unidentified appeared from hidden regions, joining the rebels with perfect timing. They did not announce themselves, did not fire weapons, yet their actions changed the balance of the engagement. The pilot realized that the black ship was coordinating these movements, guiding allies and isolating threats, but not without risk. The hidden Dominion fleet was intelligent, adaptable, and now desperate. Every advantage the black ship provided could be countered if the Empire calculated quickly enough. On the pilot's ship, the crew received fragmented transmissions from colonies under siege. Civilians were fleeing, supply chains collapsing, and some rebel leaders questioned whether following the black ship's path was worth the risk. Morale wavered, even as courage surged, leaving the team in a precarious emotional balance. The pilot understood that the conflict was no longer only about fleets. It was about perception, resilience, and the will to act under extraordinary pressure. Every heartbeat, every decision, every risk carried consequences far beyond their understanding. The Dominion fleet's commander, aware of the black ship's selective influence, made a desperate move. He deployed a network of energy anchors designed to trap not just the pilot's ship, but the black ship itself within a limited field. It was a gamble, an escalation that could either cripple the ship's movements or trigger a catastrophe. The void seemed to tense in response, as though the galaxy itself recognized the magnitude of the moment. And then came the final, most unnerving twist. From within the black ship, faint signals reached the pilot's vessel, symbols he had seen before, but this time more urgent, almost pleading. They suggested a path, but one that was dangerous beyond imagination. Following it could offer a decisive advantage, or it could lead straight into a trap engineered by the Dominion's hidden fleet. The crew turned to the pilot, their eyes reflecting fear, determination, and an unspoken trust. They waited for him to decide. Every faction, every ship, every life in this corner of the galaxy was now entwined in a moment that could redefine everything. The young pilot, feeling the weight of countless hopes and fears pressing upon him, realized that the black ship's true test was just beginning. And as the hidden Dominion fleet advanced, the gravitational rifts grew, the energy anchors hummed with menace, and the void itself seemed alive with anticipation. One undeniable truth emerged. The next move would determine not just victory or defeat, but the fate of Galaxies entire. The tension reached a breaking point. No one could predict what would happen next. Allies and enemies teetered on the edge, civilians and fleets alike held their breath, and the young pilot stared into the darkness, knowing that every decision, every instinct, and every ounce of courage would be tested beyond anything he had ever faced. The black ship waited, silent and immense, and the galaxy braced for the storm that was about to erupt. The void seemed to tremble as the pilot's ship followed the black ship's guidance through the chaotic battlefield. Energy ripples from the gravitational rifts danced across every surface, casting strange shadows over both Rebel and Dominion fleets. The hidden Dominion armada moved with deadly precision, ready to exploit the slightest mistake. Yet the black ship moved with an almost unnatural grace, guiding allies, creating openings, and nullifying the Empire's most devastating maneuvers. Every vessel, every pilot, every life seemed connected through its influence, their actions flowing like a single coordinated organism. The pilot's vessel surged forward, weaving through the wreckage of destroyed ships, narrowly avoiding the gravity wells that threatened to crush them. The black ship's symbols flashed across his console again, more urgent than before. Following them meant diving directly into the heart of the Dominion's experimental energy anchors, a zone no ordinary vessel could survive. Every instinct screamed danger, yet every ounce of trust in the black ship urged him onward. His crew glanced at one another, eyes filled with fear and determination, and then back to him, waiting for the command that could either save them or doom them all. With a deep breath, the pilot made the decision. He adjusted the ship's trajectory, engines roaring against the immense gravitational forces, and plunged into the center of the Dominion's formation. The hidden fleet fired simultaneously, gravity cannons lancing toward the ship, disruptors scrambling their systems. For a moment, the pilot felt as if the void itself was collapsing. Every alarm screamed, every system groaned under the strain. But then, as if responding to the pilot's will, the black ship descended from its shadowed perch, positioning itself between the rebels and the armada. Its vast hull absorbed the brunt of the assault, warping energy fields to protect the smaller vessels. Across the galaxy, colonies and rebel outposts watched in awe. Sensors picked up the spectacle, and even those who had never left their worlds could feel the shift. The black ship's presence inspired courage like nothing before. Its silent power forced the Dominion fleets to hesitate, disrupts their coordination, and exposed weaknesses that had been invisible until now. Civilians and militias rose with renewed vigor, sabotaging supply lines, seizing communication arrays, and rallying fleets that had been scattered across the outer systems. The tide was turning, and the young pilot's choice had catalyzed it. Inside the Dominion Command Center, chaos erupted. The Hidden Fleet's commander realized too late that the Black Ship had anticipated this strategy. Every deployment, every anchor, every tactical maneuver had been countered. The Empire's greatest weapon, the experimental energy anchors, became its own prison. Vessels were pulled into the very rifts they had intended to control. Systems overloaded, and the fleet's cohesion dissolved into disarray. The young pilot watched as the Empire's power collapsed in real time, the Black Ship moving like a shadow of judgment across the battlefield, precise, unstoppable, and almost merciful in its execution. But the climax had only begun. As the pilot maneuvered his ship through the collapsing battlefield, the Black Ship's symbols began to shift again, this time forming a pattern that suggested an entirely new threat. From the energy distortions in the nebula, a massive, previously unseen Dominion dreadnought emerged, larger than any vessel yet encountered, its energy core pulsing with the power to annihilate entire fleets. It had remained hidden, a contingency far beyond even the Hidden Fleet, designed to turn the tide if all else failed. Its emergence sent shockwaves across every sensor, destabilizing navigation systems and threatening to crush Rebel and Dominion ships alike. The pilot's heart raced. Following the Black Ship's guidance, he realized that this dreadnought was not invincible, but defeating it would require more than raw firepower. The Black Ship's energy field had weakened it subtly, exposing vulnerabilities in the shields and power conduits. The pilot coordinated with the Allied vessels, timing every strike with surgical precision, guided by the Black Ship's unseen influence. Beams of energy tore through the dreadnought's armor, engines faltering, and finally the massive vessel convulsed before exploding into a cascade of fire and debris. The Hidden Fleet scattered, leaderless and broken, their threat extinguished in a blaze of light. The galaxy seemed to exhale. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion's power was broken, and freedom surged across countless star systems. Colonies celebrated cautiously, aware that the war was far from over but emboldened by the Black Ship's guidance. Rebel leaders who had once doubted their chances now coordinated with precision, inspired by the invisible hand that had led them through impossible odds. The pilot felt a surge of relief, pride, and exhaustion, knowing that every life saved was a testament to courage, strategy, and faith in the unknown. And then, just as the pilot allowed himself a brief moment of triumph, the final twist emerged. The Black Ship, immense and silent, shifted its position in a way that no one had anticipated. Its energy pulsed outward, but instead of merely retreating or observing, it projected a series of holographic images directly into the pilot's mind. The images revealed that the Dominion's collapse was only temporary. Far beyond the known galaxy, secret fleets had begun to regroup, armed with technology capable of challenging even the Black Ship itself. Worse, the messages showed that the Black Ship's power was not unlimited. If misused or misunderstood, it could disappear entirely, leaving the galaxy vulnerable to a resurgence of the Empire's forces. The young pilot's relief vanished, replaced by a renewed sense of urgency. The climax had been reached, yes, but the war was far from over. The Black Ship's final message was clear. Victory required understanding, vigilance, and choices that would define the next era. The pilot realized that the true test was not the battle just fought, but the challenges still to come, decisions that would determine whether the galaxy remained free or fell again into shadow. Amid the debris of the battlefield, the Black Ship performed one final act. A wave of energy swept across the surviving Rebel vessels, repairing critical systems, stabilizing navigation, and empowering fleets with an almost imperceptible boost to weapons and shields. It did not fight for them directly, it only enabled them to continue the fight, trusting that they could now act with clarity, coordination, and courage. And then, as silently as it had arrived, it vanished into the void, leaving a trail of starlight that shimmered across the galaxy like a promise. The young pilot's ship floated among the remnants of the battlefield, engines humming, crew shaken but alive. Colonies began reporting contact with rebel fleets, systems once under Dominion control declaring independence, and a sense of hope spreading across the outer reaches of the galaxy. The main conflict, the immediate battle against the hidden fleets and the Dominion's dreadnought, had been resolved. The Dominion's power was broken, at least for now, and the pilot, along with the rebels, had proven that courage, strategy, and trust could defy even the most overwhelming odds. Yet, even in victory, uncertainty lingered. The holographic message remained imprinted in the pilot's mind, a warning that the struggle was far from complete. Secret fleets, hidden weapons, and the unpredictable nature of the Black Ship itself meant that the galaxy's future was still undecided. The final twist, the realization that the ultimate battle might be yet to come, cast a shadow over the triumph, reminding everyone that freedom was not a guarantee, but something earned, maintained, and defended. As the pilot gazed into the starlit void, he knew that the galaxy had changed irreversibly. Systems that had once lived under oppression now had a chance to rebuild. Fleets that had once quivered before the Dominion now acted with confidence. And the Black Ship, mysterious, powerful, and incomprehensible, remained a symbol of hope, challenge, and the unknown. Every choice, every act of courage, and every spark of resistance would now ripple across the galaxy, shaping the destiny of countless worlds. The climax had come and gone, but the story was not over. The young pilot and his crew knew that vigilance was essential, that freedom required constant action, and that the next twist in the galaxy's fate could emerge from anywhere, at any time. The Black Ship's presence had tested them, guided them, and revealed both the strength and the fragility of hope. And as they prepared to move forward, navigating the shattered remnants of the Dominion's forces, they carried with them a realization more powerful than any weapon, that the true power of the Black Ship lay not in destruction, but in its ability to awaken courage, resilience, and unity across a galaxy that had once forgotten both. The void stretched on endlessly, filled with stars, shadows, and the uncharted territories of possibility. And somewhere, beyond the reach of every sensor, the Black Ship waited, patient, immense, and enigmatic. The galaxy had survived its first test, but the next challenge was already approaching, and no one could predict what it would bring. The battlefield slowly fell silent. The scattered debris of destroyed ships drifted through the void like ghostly reminders of the war that had just shaken the galaxy. Rebel fleets, once fragmented and uncertain, began to regroup, their movements coordinated and confident for the first time. Colonies that had suffered under the Dominion's shadow now reported clear skies and functioning systems, their people daring to hope for the first time in decades. The young pilot watched from the bridge of his vessel as communication channels filled with messages of relief, gratitude, and cautious optimism. It was a moment of calm, fragile yet undeniable, like the breath between storms. The survivors of the Dominion's hidden fleets were either captured or scattered, retreating to the core systems to lick their wounds. Intelligence suggested that the Empire's reach had been severely diminished, its grip on outer sectors broken. The pilot knew this would not guarantee permanent peace. The Dominion had always been resilient. But for now, freedom had been won, not through domination, but through courage, strategy, and the inspiration of something far greater than any weapon: the Black Ship. Across the galaxy, the legend of the ship had grown, not as a force of destruction, but as a symbol of hope, unity, and the possibility of a future shaped by choice rather than fear. On Erin, the colonies began to rebuild. Rebel engineers worked alongside local miners to repair infrastructure, restore power, and ensure that essential supplies reached even the most remote settlements. Families who had fled returned cautiously, encouraged by reports of victory and protection. The young pilot took a moment to walk among the people, witnessing firsthand the impact of the battle. Children played where they had once hidden in fear. Farmers returned to their fields. Leaders and ordinary citizens alike were talking not about survival alone, but about rebuilding lives and communities, inspired by the chance to determine their own destiny. The pilot's crew gathered in the main chamber, reflecting on everything that had happened. The tension that had once bound them so tightly together eased into quiet camaraderie. Each member shared personal reflections, fears they had faced, mistakes they had narrowly avoided, and the courage they had discovered within themselves. The ship had become more than a vessel. It had been a crucible, forging bonds, resolve, and understanding. Even in the aftermath, they knew that their actions had ripple effects across the galaxy, shaping the choices of countless individuals and entire civilizations. Meanwhile, messages from distant colonies revealed that the Black Ship's influence had extended far beyond the immediate battlefield. In systems untouched by the fighting, small groups of citizens had risen to take control of their destinies, forming councils, restoring governance, and resisting remnants of Dominion control. The ship had inspired courage without fighting directly, teaching the galaxy that freedom was not just the absence of oppression, but the presence of initiative, resilience, and unity. The pilot realized that the Black Ship's true legacy was not destruction. It was empowerment, a force that had awakened the potential for change in everyone who had witnessed or felt its presence. In the Dominion's core worlds, a cautious recalibration began. High-ranking officials acknowledged the Empire's weakened state, while covert analysts studied the patterns of the Black Ship, desperate to understand its nature. The dreadnoughts and hidden fleets that had once projected absolute power were now inactive, and the Empire's propaganda shifted subtly, focusing on rebuilding and avoiding further uprisings. Some feared the growing legend of the Black Ship more than any weapon. It had shown that control over others could be broken not just by force, but by inspiring action and hope. The Empire had survived, but the lessons of the battle would haunt it for years to come. The young pilot spent hours reviewing data and transmissions, reflecting on the choices that had defined the conflict. Each step, each maneuver, each moment of courage had been critical. He understood that victory had not been simple, nor had it been guaranteed. Every fleet lost, every system saved, every decision made in the heat of uncertainty had contributed to the outcome. And yet, he realized, the war had never been about dominance. It had always been about resilience, trust, and the power to act in the face of fear. That lesson, he knew, was the most important of all. The Black Ship itself remained elusive. It had vanished into the void, leaving behind only traces of energy and the profound sense that it had shaped not just a battle, but the very trajectory of the galaxy. Scientists and scholars began to study its influence, noting the anomalies it had created, the subtle guidance it had offered, and the unprecedented courage it had inspired. The ship had become more than a legend. It had become a symbol, a reminder that even in the darkest moments there were forces, seen or unseen, that could awaken hope, resilience, and action. Across the galaxy, the pilot received messages from allied leaders and ordinary citizens alike. There were accounts of systems peacefully reclaiming autonomy, of families reunited, of new councils and alliances forming in the wake of the conflict. Even in places that had once been considered lost to the Dominion, communities were now organizing, rebuilding, and asserting control over their own destinies. The victory was not complete, and challenges remained, but the foundation had been laid for a galaxy that could resist oppression and embrace freedom. As the young pilot prepared to continue his journey, he considered the personal lessons of the war. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. Leadership was not about issuing commands alone. It was about earning trust and guiding through example. Freedom was not simply the removal of tyranny. It was the empowerment of every individual to make choices, take action, and shape the future. These lessons, he understood, would carry far beyond the battlefields, influencing generations to come. Even so, there was one final reflection that weighed heavily on him. The black ship had tested them, guided them, and revealed the fragility of control and the strength of unity. Yet it had also left a subtle warning. The galaxy's freedom was not guaranteed. The Dominion's hidden forces might still regroup. New threats could emerge, and the choices of individuals, whether to act with courage or succumb to fear, would continue to define the fate of worlds. The black ship's message was clear. Victory was a moment, but freedom was an ongoing responsibility. The pilot's ship entered the outer rim, scanning for signs of life and signs of hope. Colonies began to reconnect through communication networks, sharing resources, knowledge, and strategy. Rebel leaders coordinated across systems, forming alliances that were now guided by mutual respect and shared purpose rather than fear of domination. Everywhere, the echoes of the battle and the influence of the black ship had inspired a new era of resilience, one where initiative, courage, and collaboration mattered as much as firepower. As the sun rose over the horizon of a recovering colony, the pilot stood on the observation deck, watching light stretch across fields, cities, and spaceports. Children played in the streets where they had once hidden. Citizens gathered to celebrate not just survival, but the beginning of a future they could shape. Leaders who had been inspired by the black ship's guidance were meeting to plan governance, trade, and defense, ensuring that the lessons of the past were not forgotten. And in every glance toward the stars, there was a shared understanding. Freedom had been won, but it must be maintained, nurtured, and defended. The black ship itself, though unseen, remained a silent presence in the hearts and minds of all who had witnessed its influence. Its legacy was not one of destruction, but of empowerment, inspiration, and the awakening of potential. For the young pilot, for the crew, for the colonies, and for the galaxy at large, it had shown that courage could reshape the course of history, that unity could overcome oppression, and that hope, even against overwhelming odds, was the most powerful force of all. And so, as the galaxies began to heal, as fleets returned to peaceful patrols, and as citizens reclaimed their worlds, the story found its natural conclusion. The conflict had been resolved, the main threats neutralized, and the subplots, the hidden fleets, the dreadnought, the fractured colonies, had all been addressed. The pilot, standing amidst the calm after the storm, reflected on the lessons learned, the lives saved, and the future now possible. The galaxy was free for now, shaped by courage, strategy, and the mysterious guiding force of the black ship. The final thought lingered in every heart. Freedom was not simply a gift to be claimed, it was a responsibility to uphold. And with that understanding, the galaxy stepped forward into a new era, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, strengthened by the knowledge that courage, hope, and unity could shape the fate of countless worlds. The black ship had vanished, but its legacy endured. A silent, powerful reminder that the destiny of the galaxy rested in the hands of those brave enough to act.